Okay, you're almost there. Watch the blue circle go round. And the camera's at the top, so when you look up at the top, that means you're looking straight on. You are live.
Okay, I don't
Make sure you
know
speak
who's
up.
here. It's about 5:27 or 5:28, and like I said, my producer and daughter Susan, we were on Zoom a little earlier, and we met relatives of my mother's sister who came from Russia and are now living in Israel, and it was very exciting to find people that you really knew very little about and find out what happened to all the relatives that were killed in the war and who survived and who is surviving now. So Susan was really able to understand my third cousin with his accent, and she got a lot of information that she added to her genealogies of the family. And it's amazing how she understands more of that than I do. So I'd like to welcome anyone who's out there now. I know some people usually come early. Lynn usually comes, and and if you're not early, then I know you watch it at your leisure. So I think I have about a minute or two before I start, and I know it's a beautiful day, and because we were outside working in the garage, and and I know many of you probably are out and not sitting by your computers on such a wonderful, beautiful day because summer's almost over, and um, and we don't know how much longer the good weather is going to last. So we have to take it all in while it's still here, and hopefully we don't know how long this virus is going to go on. And as I tell everybody, it's like a new life. It changed my whole life completely, where I was out every day doing things with meetings and doing my act, and of course, like I say, I had to curtail that a little bit until everything opens up. And I keep calling my entertainers that I book for my 55 plus club and my Essex Union County retired educators because I'm the booking agent. And of course, I went to comedy clubs with one of my other singers who always recommends me for jobs. So right now I'm in the poorhouse because I'm not working at my comedy. I'm doing all this free of charge to make people happy, to make them smile, to give them a little fun in their life. And I know my cousin, he usually, I don't know how he gets the jokes, but he finds them and he puts them on emails and Facebook. So let's see, we have about a minute more. I think one watch says 5:30. So I'm going to welcome everybody, whether you're here or not. If you're here, please tell me. And as I've told you before, I like to read your comments. So please comment on any of the jokes or humor that you like. All right, now Jose and Carlos are panhandlers that panhandle in different areas of town. Now, Carlos panhandles just as long as Jose, but only collects $2 to $3 every day. Jose brings home a suitcase full of $10 bills every day. He drives a Mercedes, he lives in a mortgage free house, and he has a lot of money to spend. So one day, Carlos asked Jose, he says, I work just as hard as you do and as long as you do, but how do you bring home a suitcase full of $10 bills every day? Well, look at your sign. What does it say? Replies Jose. Carlos, the sign reads, I have no work, a wife, and 6 kids to support. Jose says, no wonder you only get $2 to $3. Carlos says, so what does your sign say then? Jose shows Carlos his sign. It reads, I only need another $10 to move back to Mexico. Laughter. Okay, a lonely widow, aged 70, decided that it was time to get married again. So she put an ad in the local paper that read, husband wanted, must be in my age group, 70s, must not beat me nor run around on me, must still be good in bed. All applicants please apply in person. On the second day, she heard the doorbell. Much to her surprise and dismay, she opened the door to see a gray-haired gentleman sitting in a wheelchair. He had no arms or no legs. And the old woman said, "You're not really asking me to consider, are you? Just look at you. You have no legs." The old man smiled. "Therefore, I cannot run around on you." She snorted, "Well, you don't have any arms either." And again the old man smiled and he said, "Therefore, I can never beat you." And she raised an eyebrow and asked intently, "Are you still good in bed?" The old man leaned back, beamed a big smile, and said, "Rang the doorbell, didn't I?" A patrolman sees a car parked in a parking lot, and he goes over to the car and he shines a flashlight in the car. And there's a man and a woman in the car. And he says to the man, he says, "What are you doing parked here?" He says, "I'm taking my girlfriend's temperature." So the patrolman said, "Well, it better have numbers on it when you take it out." Oh, sorry. No, I don't think anyone's here yet. Lynn is late. In a crowded city, at a busy bus stop, a woman who was waiting for a bus was wearing a tight leather skirt. As the bus stopped and it was her turn to get on, she became aware that her skirt was too tight to allow her leg to come up to the height of the first step of the bus. Slightly embarrassed, and with a quick smile to the bus driver, she reached behind her to unzip her skirt a little, thinking that this would give her enough slack to raise her leg. Again she tried to make the step, only to discover she still couldn't. So, a little more embarrassed, she once again reached behind her to unzip her skirt a little more. For the second time she attempted the step, and once again, much to her chagrin, she could not raise her leg. With a little smile to the driver, she again reached behind to unzip a little more, and again was unable to make the step. About this time, a large Texan who was standing behind her picked her up easily by the waist and placed her gently on the step of the bus. She went ballistic and turned to the would-be Samaritan and screeched, "How dare you touch my body? I don't even know who you are." And the Texan smiled and drawled, "Well, ma'am, normally I would agree with you, but after you unzipped my fly 3 times, I kind of figured we were friends." Now this, let's wait till the laughter finishes. Last Wednesday, a passenger in a taxi heading for the airport leaned over to ask the driver a question and gently tapped him on the shoulder to get his attention. The driver screamed, lost control of the car, nearly hit a bus, drove over the curb and stepped just inches from a large plate glass window. For a few moments, everything was silent in the cab. And then the shaking driver said, "Are you okay? I'm so sorry, but you scared the living daylights out of me." And the badly shaken passenger apologized to the driver and said, "I didn't realize that a mere tap on the shoulder would startle someone so badly." And the driver replied, "Oh, no. I'm the one that's sorry. It's entirely my fault. I've been a driver for 25 years, but today is my first day driving a cab." "What were you driving before that?" He says, "A hearse." An 80-year-old lady was being interviewed by a local news station because she had just gotten married for the 4th time. The interviewer began to ask her questions about her life, why she has decided to get remarried at 80, and for some information about her new husband. "My husband is a funeral director," she answered. "Oh, that's interesting," the reporter replied. And the reporter was then curious about her previous 3 husbands and what their professions had been. After a few minutes of reflection, the woman smiled and answered proudly. She explained that in her 20s she married a banker. In her 40s, she married a ringmaster, a circus ringmaster, a preacher in her 60s, and now in her 80s, a funeral director. And the reporter was unsure how to process her answer and then asked why she married four men with four different lives and career choices. The woman once again smiled and explained, I married the first one for the money, the second for the show, the third to prepare myself, and the fourth to go. Baseball buddies. Sam and Dean were the best of friends, as well as two of the biggest baseball fans the world had ever seen. All of their lives, Sam and Dean would talk about baseball. They went to all the games they could get to. They even made a pact as kids that when one of them dies, the other one will return to tell him that heaven has baseball games. One night, after watching a Yankee victory, Sam happily dies. A few nights later, Dean wakes up to a familiar sound. It's Sam, and he's talking to him from beyond. Sam, is that you? Asked Dean. Sure is, buddy, replies Sam. Wow, this is amazing, exclaims Dean. So please tell me, is there baseball in heaven? Well, answers Sam, I have some good news and some bad news for you. Which would you like to hear first? Oh, give me the good news first. Oh, well, okay, the good news is that the answer is yes. There is baseball in heaven. That's incredible. So what's the bad news then? You're pitching tomorrow night. A newlywed farmer and his wife were visited by her mother, who immediately demanded an inspection of their home. The farmer had genuinely tried to be friendly to his new mother-in-law, hoping that it would be a friendly, non-antagonistic relationship. But to no avail, she kept nagging them at every opportunity, demanding changes, offering unwanted advice, and making life unbearable for the farmer and his new bride. While they were walking through the barn, the farmer's mule suddenly reared up and kicked the mother-in-law in the head, killing her instantly. At the funeral service a few days later, the farmer stood near the casket and greeted folks as they walked by. And the pastor noticed that whenever a woman would whisper something to the farmer, he would nod his head and say something. And whenever a man walked by and whispered to the farmer, however, he would shake his head and mumble a reply. Well, very curious as this bizarre behavior, the pastor later asked the farmer, what was it all about? And the farmer replied, the woman would say, oh, what a terrible tragedy. And I would nod my head and say, yes, it was. And the man would ask, can I borrow that mule? And I would shake my head and say, sorry, I can't do it. It's booked up for a year. Sharon Lipschitz, a middle-aged woman, is walking down the street one day when she suddenly has a heart attack. She is quickly taken to the hospital where it was determined she must undergo emergency surgery. While on the operating table, she has a near-death experience where she finds herself standing next to her unconscious body, and suddenly she sees the angel of death standing near her. That's it, I'm dead, she asks him. Not yet, says the Grim Reaper. You will live another 20 years at least. He then disappears, and Sharon wakes up in her own body. Upon her recovery, Sharon is told that she was close to death, but miraculously made a full recovery. Sharon decides that she's going to really live in the next 20 years she has left. Since she got another 20 years, she might as well make the most of it. So she decides to stay at the hospital and get a boob job. A nose surgery, liposuction, the works. She walks out of the hospital looking 20 years younger. Her body looks great, and she has a huge smile on her face. She takes 2 steps and is immediately hit by a passing ambulance, which kills her on the spot. She stands next to her body and suddenly sees the angel of death. Hey, you, she says angrily, what gives? You said I had 20 more years. The angel of death looks at her surprised. Sharon, he leans closer. Is that you? I didn't even recognize you. Moral of the story, there's something wrong with making yourself look good. But if you want to live your life properly, live them as you are and not as anyone else. Okay, is anyone here yet? No, nobody's here yet. I'm talking to nobody. Margaret was very upset as her husband Albert had just passed away. She went to the undertaker's to have one last look at her dearly departed husband. The instant she saw him, she started crying. One of the undertakers strides up to provide comfort in this somber moment, and through her tears, she explains that she's upset because her dearest Albert was wearing a black suit, and it was his dying wish to be buried in a blue suit. The undertaker apologizes and explains that traditionally they always put the bodies in a black suit, but he'd see what he could do to arrange something different. So the next day she returned to the undertaker's to have one last moment with Albert before his funeral the following day. And when the undertaker pulls back the curtain, she managed to smile through her tears as Albert is replaced in a smart blue suit. She said to the undertaker, "Wonderful, wonderful, but where did you get that beautiful blue suit?" "Well, yesterday afternoon after you left, a man about your husband's size was brought in and he was wearing a blue suit. His wife explained that she was very upset as he always wanted to be buried in a black suit," the undertaker replied, and the wife smiled at the man. He continued, "After that, it was a simple matter of swapping the heads." No laughter. Reading the millionaire's last will. A lawyer meets with the family of a recently deceased millionaire he was reading for the reading of the will. "To my loving wife, Rose, who always stood by me, I leave the house and $2 million, the attorney reads. "To my darling daughter, Jessica, who looked after me in sickness and kept the business going, I leave the yacht, the business, and $1 million. And finally," the lawyer concludes, "to my cousin Dan, who hated me, argued with me, and thought I would never mention him in my will. Well, you were wrong. Hi, David." David's gonna like that one. Oh, Lynn's back. Hi, Lynn. You were a little late today. A guy goes into a girl's house for the first time, and she shows him into the living room. She excuses herself to go to the kitchen to get them some snacks and drinks. And as he's standing there alone, he notices a cute little vase on the mantel. He picks it up, and as he's looking at it, she walks back and he says, "What's this?" She says, "Oh, that's my father's ashes are in there." He turns green in disgust and horror and goes, "Geez, oh." She says, "Oh yeah, he's too lazy to go into the kitchen to get an ashtray." While a man was dying, his wife was maintaining a candlelight vigil by his side. She held his fragile hand, tears running down her face. Her praying woke him from his slumber, and he looked up, and the pale lips began to move slightly. "Oh, my darling," he whispered. "Hush, my love," she said. "Rest, don't talk." He was resistant. "I have something that I must confess," he said in a very tired voice. "There isn't anything to confess," replied his weeping wife. "Everything's okay. Go to sleep." And the man blurted out, "No, no, I must die in peace. I slept with your sister, your best friend, her best friend, and your mother." "I know," whispered his wife. "That's why I poisoned you." A man is going skydiving for the first time, and after listening to the instructor for what seems like days, he's ready to go. The man goes up in the airplane and waits to get the proper altitude. Excited, he jumps out of the airplane, and after a bit, he pulls the cord and nothing happens. He tries again, still nothing. He starts to panic, but remembers his backup chute. He pulls that cord and nothing happens. He frantically begins pulling both cords, but to no avail. Suddenly he looks down and he can't believe his eyes. Another man is in the air with him, but this guy is going up. And as the other man gets near, the skydiver yells, "Hey, do you know anything about skydiving?" And the other guy yells back, "No, do you know anything about gas stoves?" The widow and the $30,000 funeral. Joe passed away. His will provided $30,000 for an elaborate funeral. As the last guests departed the affair, his wife Helen turned to her oldest friend. "Well, I'm sure Joe would be pleased," she said. "I'm sure you're right," replied Jody, who lowered her voice and leaned in close. "How much did this really cost?" "All of it," said Helen. $30,000. "No," Jody explained. "I mean, it was very nice, but 30,000?" Helen answered. "The funeral was 6,500. I donated $500 to the church. The wake, food, and drinks were another $500. The rest went for the memorial stone." Jody computed quickly. 22,500 for a memorial stone? My God, how big was it? She says, 2.5 carats.
I think time check. Time check?
What's that?
Time check?
Time check?
Yeah, what time do you have?
Quarter to 6. Okay, we'll do another one. A man lies on his deathbed, surrounded by his family, a weeping wife and 4 children. 3 of the children are tall, good-looking, and athletic, but the 4th and youngest is an ugly runt. "Darling wife," the husband whispers, "assure me that the youngest child really is mine. I want to know the truth before I die. I will forgive you." If the wife gently interrupts him, "Yes, my dearest, absolutely, no questions. I swear on my mother's grave that you are the father." The man then dies happy. "Thank God he didn't ask about the other 3, muttered his wife. Okay, but just one last thing in closing. It's called the golden years. The golden years are here at last. I cannot see, I cannot pee. I cannot chew, I cannot screw. My memory shrinks, my hearing stinks. No sense of smell, I look like hell. The golden years have come at last. The golden years can kiss my ass. And that's it for today. And we'll arrange for next week. And I hope other people come on later on and watch at their leisure. And hi, Lynn. Have a good night, a good day. And I'll be here next week. And I hope you're back. You're my faithful friend.